Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gopinath Radha Gopinath Shri Radhe. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parirajakacharya Shata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Abhay Charnaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Samavita Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Today we're reading from Canto 1, Chapter 13, Dhritarashtra quits home, text 21. Okay, please repeat. Pitra Bhratra Surat Putra. Pitra Bhratra Surat Putra. Hataste Vigatam Vayam. Hataste Vigatam Vayam. Atma cha jaraya grastaha. Atma cha jaraya grastaha. Parageham upasase. Parageham upasase. Pitra Bhratra Surat Putra. Hataste Vigatam Vayam. Atma cha jaraya grastaha. Parageham upasase. Pitra Bhratra Surat Putra. Hataste Vigatam Vayam. Atma cha jaraya grastaha. Parageham upasase. Pitra Bhatra Surat Putra. Madajis. Pitra, father. Bhratra, brother. Surat, well-wishers. Putraha, sons. Hataha, all dead. Te, yours. Vigatam, expended. Vayam, age. Atma, the body. Cha, also. Jaraya, by invalidity. Grasta, overcome. Parageham, another's home. Upasase, you do live. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Your father, brother, well-wishers, and sons are all dead and passed away. You yourself have expended the major portion of your life. Your body is now overtaken by invalidity, and you are living in the home of another. Purport. The king is reminded of his precarious condition, influenced by cruel time, and by his past experience, he should have been more intelligent to see what was going to happen in his own life. His father, Vichitravirya, died long ago when he and his younger brothers were all little children, and it was due to the care and kindness of Bhishmadev that they were properly brought up. Then again his brother Pandu died also. Then in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, his 100 sons and his grandsons all died, along with all other well-wishers like Bhishmadev, Dronacharya, Karna, and many other kings and friends. So he had lost all men and money, and now he was living at the mercy of his nephew, whom he had put into troubles of various types. And despite all these reverses, he thought that he would prolong his life more and more. Vidura wanted to point out to Dhritarashtra that everyone has to protect himself by his action and the grace of the Lord. One has to execute his duty faithfully, depending for the result on the Supreme Authority. No friend, no children, no father, no brother, no state, and no one else can protect a person who is not protected by the Supreme Lord. One should therefore seek the protection of the Supreme Lord, for the human form of life is meant for seeking that protection. He was warned of his precarious conditions more and more by the following words. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. I was just thinking of the example Srila Prabhupada gives, how it's practically impossible to wake up a person who's pretending to sleep. If you're actually sleeping, then even if someone makes the faintest sound, some alarm goes off, you'll wake up. But if you're pretending to sleep, then if you want to wake up, then someone has to be really forceful. So Vidura, who is Dhritarashtra's brother, stepbrother, stepbrother, he has come. He's a moving place of pilgrimage. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he used to empower his associates just by embracing them, just by giving them his darshan, his instructions. They would be full of potency, Krishna Shakti. Vinanai Tare Pravartana, unless you have Krishna Shakti bestowed by Guru and Krishna, it says that you cannot go and preach Krishna consciousness to others. So such people who were empowered by Lord Chaitanya, they would go to one village, chant the Mahamantra, and whoever came in contact with them, they would become Vaishnavas. And that energy would be transferred to people. So Vidura has this energy transferred because, as we were discussing last week, Krishna was instructing Uddhava at Prabhas Kshetra in Gujarat. And then one sage called Maitreya, he was eavesdropping on the conversation. At least I think Prabhupada mentions like that in his purport. He's eavesdropping. But Krishna knew he was there. And he got all the information that Krishna was speaking to Uddhava. And later on, Vidura, in his travels around Bharatavarsha, he came across Uddhava, who was just preparing. He was just on his way to go to Badrikashram to take sannyas, retire from his duty in Dwarka. All the Yadus had killed themselves anyway, so he was going there. And he met this sage, Maitreya. And again, they spoke there. And Vidura, he met Maitreya as well after. And because Uddhava, Vidura met Uddhava, and Uddhava told Vidura, go and get this knowledge from Maitreya. And so that was passed down through the parampara system from Krishna to Uddhava, from Uddhava to Maitreya Rishi, and then from Maitreya Rishi to Vidura. And then that same knowledge is now being passed by Vidura to Dhritarashtra to wake him up from the slumber. So it's very interesting to see the power of a lust, the power of Maya. Sometimes I give the example that if a child is born to parents, and let's say the parents pass away and the child becomes an orphan, and then he or she gets adopted by someone, and then the child grows up, and then one day the foster parents, that's what they're called, foster parents, they tell this particular son or daughter that actually we're not your real parents. You had other biological parents. Now, unless that child has actually information about what his or her biological parents were like for example, the color of their hair, or what his real biological mother used to like to cook, what their pastimes were, which country they were born in, this and that. It would be very difficult for this orphan to develop a strong attachment for his parents, for his real biological parents. Because of that lack of information, it would be very hard to establish that strong bond. But because his foster parents were there as this child was growing up, he would instead have, he may be curious, he or she may be curious to find out who they were, but that strong, intense attachment wouldn't be there. And similarly, so that example you can give when we're talking about Krishna, when we're talking about our lost relationship with God. If we don't have sufficient information about God, it's very hard for us to develop a loving attraction for God. If we just understand Him to be something impersonal, or Him to be a person, but we don't know anything about His person, His name, form, qualities, pastimes, it's very hard for us to develop a loving attraction and a service attitude towards God. But here is something very interesting. Dhritarashtra is blind from birth. He has never seen the face of Duryodhana. He's just embraced him. Maybe as a child, Duryodhana has sat on his lap, but he's never seen him. Yet throughout his whole life, that attachment was so intense that as he went from middle age to old age, he had an intense desire to establish his son, who he had never ever seen, on the throne. That's a strong power of lust. Even if we're born blind, deaf, dumb from birth, we will still be attracted to the opposite sex, even if we've never seen them before. Because these samskaras are coming from past lives. So it's not a case of only the senses interacting with the objects of senses. The chief sense, as is explained in the Bhagavad Gita, the chariot picture, is the mind. And the mind is active even in the sleeping state, even in the unconscious state. It's coming, all the impressions from previous lifetimes. So your senses may be defective, you may be not using the senses, you may be in some forest in seclusion or whatever, still lust will play out through the mind. So it's very essential for us to engage our mind primarily in Krishna consciousness. So here we see Dhritarashtra, he is, as our acharyas explain, particularly Prahlad Maharaj, Hitvatma patam griham andakupam vanam gatoya dharim ashrayata. He's explaining to his father the first lesson that Prahlad Maharaj learns. O best of the asuras, one should not utilize one's life uselessly in pursuing material things. One should not get embroiled in materialistic family life, which is considered to be a dark well. Just yesterday, we had a trip to the farm and we were discussing Krishna book. We were discussing the pastime of Muchukunda. And Muchukunda, in that pastime, one of the verses which is mentioned there in the Krishna book is that sometimes an animal, it's walking, and there's a hole in the ground, a ditch in the ground covered by grass, and the animal unexpectedly falls into the ditch. And once it falls in this dark ditch, it's impossible for any other animal to take it out. The other animals at the top, they may look down at the animal, the poor animal in the dark well or whatever. They may lament, but there's no way for this animal to come out. But if a human being had fallen into such a dark well, it is possible. Someone can throw a rope, someone can get down, with a ladder and take the other person up. So, as it's being mentioned here today, where is it? As being mentioned here today, human form of life is meant for, what was Prabhupada saying? 21, sorry. The human form of life is meant for seeking the protection of the Lord. Through association of devotees, through gaining transcendental knowledge. If an animal falls in, just like animals, they're not subject to karma because they don't have sufficient knowledge, intelligence to act in any way contrary to their conditioned nature, whereas human beings can. But human beings can also, because of they have higher intelligence and intellect, they can use their intelligence to get themselves out of the deep dark well. So the influence of Maya is exceptionally strong. Reason why we don't see too much examples, like you can see practically, even sometimes in our Krishna consciousness movement, that once someone enters grihastha life, it's very, very difficult to take sannyas. It's very, very difficult to take vanaprastha. Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport, in the first canto of Bhagavatam, earlier on in this canto, he mentions that the nature of Maya is that man is attracted to woman and a woman is attracted to man. So they come together, and once they engage physically in a relationship, that creates a tight knot of bondage inside the mind, and they become, they feel obliged towards one another because of that tight knot of bondage. And as a result of that comes, how now can we live together in this world? So comes house and children and everything along with it, money, all that sort of stuff. And Prabhupada mentions, and then they live they try to live a very peaceful illusion to the effect in this material world. So that tight knot of bondage, you can see Dhritarashtra, he has 100 sons, but of course it was one pregnancy, right? But then Gandharishi hid herself on her stomach. Nevertheless, we see how strong this bondage is. But because jivas are pleasure-seeking, and just like one person was raising the point yesterday, Krishna is Atmaram. Yes, Krishna is Atmaram, he doesn't need to experience happiness beyond himself, that's true. But Krishna is also the supreme enjoyer. So although Krishna can be completely peaceful and happy just by enjoying himself, he likes to expand his happiness unlimitedly. Therefore, he expands himself into many other jivas, eko bahushyam, and enjoys unlimited varieties of transcendental rasas and relationships with his parts and parcels. So even though Krishna expands himself into many jivas, we shouldn't think that Krishna is enjoying with someone else. When Krishna enjoys with jivas, he is still enjoying with his own potency, so he still remains an Atmarama. Like that. Krishna still remains as an Atmarama. So the jivas, just like Krishna experiences happiness through transcendental relationships, the jiva, being Anandamoyo Bhyasat, also experiences happiness through transcendental relationships. When we have a lack of relationship established with Krishna, then we try to look for happiness in relationships in this material world. Prabhupada mentions that instead of having a relationship with God, people nowadays are seeking a relationship with dog. So the exact opposite, G-O-D, D-O-G. And people are, I don't want to mention what I saw the other day. Okay, I won't say it. Maybe after. But something not so good, something that a dog was doing in public, and then people were unexpectedly passing by. Anyway, that's material civilization nowadays. That people are more attracted to serving their dogs, picking up their stool, and etc., walking them around, wasting their time, rather than utilizing their most valuable asset, which is time, and time is Krishna, in serving God, and not dog. So unless we have that strong, intense relationship with Krishna, it's very hard for us to give up the relationships in this material world and serve Krishna exclusively. So because, especially we see in Western culture, when people get married, they say, "Till death do us apart." So let us stay married, let us stay happily, let's try to enjoy happiness in a world where there's no actual happiness, together with our pets and our children and our relatives and our in-laws and this and that, till death do us apart. But Vedic civilization, real human civilization based on Gyan and Vairagya, transcendental knowledge and detachment, is not based on such a concept. The purpose of Grihastha life is purely, exclusively to teach the conditioned soul that mature relationships are not actually fulfilling and satisfying to our real self. Our happiness is only in establishing relationship with Krishna and Krishna's devotees. So therefore we have to make our relatives, our friends, our family into devotees, into Vaishnavas as well. And it's meant to teach us that it's very difficult to maintain such material relationships as well. That's pretty much the only purpose of Grihastha ashram. It's considered to be more like a detour. So first you're in student life, then if one is attached, because student life or brahmachari life, its mention is for the attached and for the detached. So we shouldn't think that brahmachari life is only for those who are seeking renunciation in this world. No, brahmachari life or celibate student life is meant for those who want to remain renounced throughout their life, as well as for those who want to enter Grihastha ashram as well. And they can do so equipped with the best possible knowledge and experience, having practiced student life in such an environment under the tutelage of a guru. So one traditionally goes, or one can go the express route from brahmachari ashram directly to sannyas. But if one is attached still, after years and years under the tutelage of a guru, one is allowed to enter Grihastha ashram. So then one goes from a situation of completely being free and renounced and practicing spiritual life full-time to perhaps being a little more entangled, but it's like a vaccination. Like if you're sick, or rather before falling sick, the doctor may give you a vaccination. But what is the vaccination? The vaccination is the disease. but it's in a very controlled form. So Grihastha ashram, one can think of it to be something like a vaccination. You're getting the so-called disease of getting materially entangled, but it's supposed to be done in a controlled way, in a Krishna conscious way. And if it's done in a Krishna conscious way, if it's done according to rules and regulations, for example, a Grihastha is supposed to give in charity, he's supposed to maintain other living entities like that, then one practices Grihastha ashram following such rules and regulations. By doing it in that way, over a period of time, one gets the proper realization, which leads one to renunciation. So actions based on jnana provided by the Shastra naturally lead to renunciation, vairagya. Otherwise, we will remain in this hitvatma patam grihamandakupam. So it needs to be done according to the principles of Shastra. So then, okay, one enters, but then the point is that one varnashram system is geared towards renunciation. It's not geared towards attachment, because ultimately everyone has to take sannyas, either by actually entering to the ashram or by dying. So Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj says that you have to die before you die. Dying before dying means what? When we're dying, we give up our name. Who was it? Recently someone was saying, Kanamaka Maharaj. He was requesting devotees to read one of the last Vyas Puja offerings that he had written to Srila Prabhupada. And in that, Maharaj was explaining how Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was saying, I'm giving up my name, I'm no longer Bhakti Tirtha Swami, I'm no longer Ganesham Das, I'm no longer a sannyasi, I'm no longer a book distributor, I'm no longer this and that. And one may think, but, these are something very dear. These designations, they are still in one sense spiritual. But even though he may be in the body of a sannyasi, like that, but this is still not his eternal spiritual body. So our current body, deha, may be spiritualized, but it is not our eternal spiritual body. So we're a step in the right direction. We're spiritualizing our material self, but our material self, which may be spiritualized, is still not our actual eternal self. So dying before dying means to die in our consciousness, material consciousness, by awakening our spiritual consciousness. I was just reading some time ago, so we're speaking about Varnashram a little bit. So this is a verse from Prayers by Queen Kunti, and this is 1st Canto, Chapter 8, Text 5. This is the purport Srila Prabhupada is writing. I'll just read the translation. The clever Duryodhana and his party cunningly usurped the kingdom of Yudhishthir, who had no enemy. By the grace of the Lord, the recovery was executed, and the unscrupulous kings who joined with Duryodhana were killed by him. Others also died, their duration of life having decreased for the rough handling of the hair of Queen Draupadi. You probably remember this verse. I think Narsimha Kavachpu, he gave the class. But the purport is very nice because Srila Prabhupada is outlining that in a real human society, one should give protection to 5 groups of living entities. And if one doesn't give protection to them, and even worse, if one harasses them or causes them violence or something like that, it actually decreases one's duration of life. So we actually see, I'll say what they are. In the glorious days, or before the advent of the age of Kali, the brahmanas, the cows, the women, the children, and old men were properly given protection. So Srila Prabhupada is going down listing them in numerical form, and he's explaining why they should be given protection. The protection, so this is point 1, the protection of the brahmanas maintains the institution of varna and ashram, the most scientific culture for attainment of spiritual life. So my Guru Maharaj was giving a seminar on the history of Vedic culture, particularly in India. And there he was remarking that when the British, when they went to India, and the Portuguese, and then later the Spanish came to know about it, the Germans, the French, they were totally astounded and amazed at how the Brahmanas in the Vedic culture, there in the East, had such a strong grip on society, how they were maintaining society so nicely in terms of arts, in terms of culture, in terms of literature. These are all Brahmanical activities. They're the heads of society. Their system of politics, their system of defense, government was so first class. In fact, it was scaring the West because the West had never seen anything like this. They had never seen anything like institution of Varnashram, the Brahmanas, nothing like that. So the British then, because all throughout Europe, what he coined as India mania was flooding throughout. So they were becoming very interested. The Russians, the Germans, they were becoming very interested to study Sanskrit and all this sort of stuff, the Rig Veda. But then the British, because they had ulterior motives, they wanted to subjugate India. They wanted to rule over. They had monetary incentives to be in that country. They wanted the spice trade and all this sort of stuff. And also, even in England itself, there was a great evangelical movement with the Anglicans and the Baptists, the Protestants. So these people were wanting to come to India for reasons not so much to understand the antiquity of the culture, the greatness of the culture, like the earlier historians and the earlier Indologists. So they came with ulterior motives to completely eradicate and subjugate and destroy Vedic culture. And one of the prime reasons was that it was so different, it was scary because it had lasted the test of time. Even though they had been invaded by so many different people, still this Vedic culture is very strong. And it cannot be destroyed because it's created by Krishna himself, as he mentions in the Bhagavad Gita. So the Brahmanas, they maintain the institution of Varna and Ashram. And Prabhupada is mentioning that this Varna Ashram system is the most scientific culture for attainment of spiritual life. The Brahmanas are supposed to give protection to humans, following the Varnashram system, both in a material sense as well as in a spiritual sense, to guide them ultimately, because the four goals of Varnashram system are dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, liberation. So therefore, it's the most scientific culture for the attainment of spiritual life. If not Vaishnav, then at least one will aim for moksha, liberation from the bondage of material existence. Number 2, the protection of cows maintains the most miraculous form of food, i.e. milk for maintaining the finer tissues of the brain for understanding the higher aims of life. Ahar shuddho sattva shuddhi smriti lambe smriti tad grantinam vipra moksha. Prabhupada quotes this verse in the Bhagavad Gita, where it's mentioned that if one eats food, ahar shuddho, in the mode of goodness, sattva shuddhi, one comes to the mode of goodness. If one comes to the mode of goodness, then over a period of time, one's intelligence becomes engaged also in mode of goodness activities. And by doing that, one can actually start to think of tad grantinam vipramoksha, something like this. One will start to think in terms of renunciation and liberation. But the whole process starts with ahar shuddho. It starts by subsisting yourself in foods in a mode of goodness, particularly cow's milk. And I was talking to Kalia Krishna Prabhu, and he was mentioning that nowadays there's a propaganda by vegans and all these people who say that the cow only provides enough milk just for its own baby. But he was telling me, because he's a farmer, he's been a farmer for decades now, protected cows, He has all the experience of what it is like for cows to naturally give milk in a protected environment. So he was explaining that such people who profess such ideas, they actually don't know. They have no experience of living on farms, dealing with cows, nothing like that. A cow will, once it has a calf, will give so much more milk than the calf can actually take. And not only that, the cow will keep giving milk even after its calf stops taking the mother's milk. So when the calf grows up and stops taking the mother's milk, still the mother will keep giving milk for many, many, many years after. I think once he said something like 5 or 6 years, some cow still kept giving milk like that. So this is because, as we learn from the pages of Bhagavatam, the cows are happy. So at that point in time, under Maharaj Yudhishthira's rule, they were so happy and joyous that their milk used to moisten the fields. So fields moistened with cow's milk because the cows were so happy. So point number 3, the protection of women maintains the chastity of society, by which we can get good generation for peace, tranquility, and progress of life. This is Arjuna's point in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, why he doesn't want to kill all the men who are supposed to give protection to the women, because then the chastity of womanhood will not be there in society, and then that will give rise to Varna Sankara, or unwanted progeny, which Prabhupada explains gives rise to war and pestilence in society. Point number 4, the protection of children gives the human form of life its best chance to prepare the way of liberty from material bondage. Such protection of children begins from the very day of begetting a child by the purificatory process of Garbhadan Samskar, the beginning of pure life. So the protection of the children begins while the child is still within the womb of the mother. The protection of the children doesn't begin once the child is born, but the parents perform Garbhadan Samskar before they unite or whatever, and then that is to be in the proper consciousness to attract a soul into the womb. It's a science. You can read about it in Garuda Puran and all these other shastras. On what day to conceive, and you will attract a male child and a female child. And so it's a Garbhadan Samskar. It's a great science which is given. A God-conscious child into the womb of the mother. So the child, when the child is born, there's another samskar, Krishna, the Janma Samskar. When Krishna was born, that ceremony was held as well. And the child is protected further by sending the child to Gurukul. The children are further protected by separating the children in terms of sexes. Nowadays, it's mentioned that when the children come to the age of 13 or 14, they've experienced all the pleasures that you can experience in life, which people, just 100 years ago didn't experience until they were maybe 25 or 30 years of age. So such is the protection of children in today's society. And point number 5, which relates to Dhritarashtra, the protection of the old men gives them a chance to prepare themselves for better life after death. So that is why old men should be protected, to give them a chance to become Krishna conscious at the end of their life. And of course, if they're married, then if they take sannyas and they attain moksha or whatever, they go back to Godhead, then the wife, who doesn't have to undergo such severe austerities as her husband, she also gets similar benefit. And Srila Prabhupada is saying here, this outlook is based on factors leading to a successful humanity as opposed to a civilization of polished cats and dogs. To insult a chaste woman brings about the disaster and duration of life. Dushasan, a brother of Duryodhan, insulted Draupadi, an ideal chaste lady, and therefore the miscreants died untimely. These are some of the stringent laws of the Lord mentioned above. So we can see in our society, epidemics, natural disasters, adibautic miseries, things like terrorism and all this sort of stuff, things which are unheard of, 100, 200 years ago, are coming up because we're not giving protection to these 5 groups of living entities. And as such, material nature is coming up with ways to push on slaughterhouse civilization, as Prabhupada coins it, slaughterhouse civilization. We're doing the wrong thing, so material nature creates a slaughterhouse for our human society to reap in mass the karmic reactions that we are deserving based on whatever sinful activities we're performing. So I'll stop there. I think we're just on time. So stop. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.